working perfectly fine when there was only one single server. But now, these days, we have applications which have like servers deployed in multiple regions, multiple servers are also managing them. And it's very hard to maintain these sessions on all of the servers. Let's say you are in India and there is your friend who is in US. Now, when they are going to communicate with any website like facebook.com or Amazon, a person who is accessing facebook.com from India, their request goes to the nearby server. So maybe the server is in Mumbai, maybe the server nearby to them will be in Singapore. So they get a request over there. Anyone who is from US will get a request handled in the US servers only, like on the East Coast or the West Coast. Now, why it is important for us? Because this creates a big problem. How is this session going to be shared between all of the hundreds of different servers across the world? The solution to this is, first of all, let's not use these cookies. Okay, I got a question. Increase the font size. I can zoom in a little bit if you want. I think this should be fine. Okay, is it fine now? Okay, now a solution to this problem was introducing JSON web tokens. So how they work is, we'll come to a different side on this and create the same application over here. So create a box. We have our Angular application. Let's change the font also. Font family. Can I change the font? No, I cannot. Okay. So this is my application. Oh, okay, it changes the font. Yeah, that's good. Now, on this application, again, we have a server which is running on this side, and I do a login call. So when I say login, it sends a request again to the server. It carries my information, that my email address and password is this. Okay. Now, when this request goes to the server again creates connection with the database. It checks, okay, do you have these credentials? The database will look for this person's detail and allow the server to verify that this is good. Okay, and now once the server has validated that this person's credentials are correct, what it does is it runs a logic. So there is there is a way of creating JSON web tokens on the server side. So every language has a library to create JSON web tokens on them. Okay, so it's going to create a JSON web token from this code. Now, a JSON web token looks like something like this. Let me show you here. So a JSON web token has three parts in it. So you first have your algo, then you will have a dot, that will be your payload, then again a dot, and then you have a signature over here. Okay, a JSON web token will look like this. There will be a part for the algorithm, which algorithm is used for creating the token. Second will be the payload, and last is going to be your signature. So signature is going to be used for verifying this. Now on your server side, in your server side code, there will be the library is going to take some kind of a secret key, a unique key, which is going to create this token for you. Now once this token is created, your server's responsibility is that send this token to the client side. So this token is being received on the client side. Okay. Now, once it has been on the client side code, there will be a code you need to write over here, which is going to store the token in your session storage or local storage. So any of these can be used for this. So say I will store my session token in my session storage or local storage. So that will be stored over here. Okay, let's say it's stored in the session storage now. Now, how does this work in this case? So in this case, what will happen is the token which is in the session storage will be kept over here. Now, when the client needs new data, what it does is it sends this token along with the request. So now, in the case of cookies, this process was automated. The cookie was there on the browser, it automatically picks it up and sends it to the server. But now, because we are implementing a special approach of JSON Web Tokens, which is not natively implemented in the browser to send automatic information to the server, we have to write the code for it. So what I will say, from the session storage, pick the session token or the JSON Web Token, and when you send a request like this to the server, copy that token and send that token along with the request. Okay, so every request which you're sending to the server side now is going to have this token with it. Now on the server side has a special key on it. So this special key is going to be used for verifying this token. So there is going to be a verify method on the server side, which will take this token, compare it or verify it with the special key, which is going to tell us that this token was created by the same application or not. Okay. Now the server will say, yes, it is created by me, and I will send you the data which you are looking for. So it will send you the data like this. Okay. Now the benefit of this approach is, first of all, it's not using any RAM for storing the token. So I didn't draw anything related to RAM. The reason is this token is only stored on the client side. So once the client receives this token, there is no reference to this token on the server side. The server has no information that it created this token for somebody. Okay, so only the client knows this token. Your laptop or your device which you're using for accessing the application will only have this information now. Next thing would be, if I create multiple servers like this. In the previous example, the problem was, if the request goes from application to the third server like this, it cannot verify that who is this person sending the request. But with a JSON Web Token, if I send the token to this server also, and there is going to be a shared key which is going to verify the tokens, like let's say I have a shared key, the verification key over here is ABC. So all of these servers are going to maintain it and verify the token based on this ABC key. So it's very easy now. So if you have like thousands of different servers across the world, uh, each of them can have this token, each of this can have this secret key and verify the token. So even if you are right now in India and you travel to Singapore, your same session token will work on the Singapore servers also. The same will work on any other country which the servers are located. So it's very easy to maintain the sessions across multiple servers. That's the first reason JSON Web Tokens are introduced. Next thing is coming back to the cookies. Okay, so let's say you're using how many devices you have right now. So you will have a phone, your iPhone or your Android phone. You will have your laptop, a laptop from your office, laptop for your personal laptop. Maybe you have an iPad, maybe you have a smart TV, and all of these new devices we have. So these are the current trend. Everybody has multiple different types of devices which are used for accessing the content or accessing some website. Now, with this, if you go back like let's say 15 years back, if I go 15 years back, we didn't have iPhones, we didn't have iPads. We had only one system. Like ideally, you will have a personal system or office system with you, like two systems at your place to access the internet. Our TVs were not also smart. The smart TVs have just came in 10 years back. The concept of applications like Android or iOS applications was also not there. So the cookie-based approach was working fine because the primary way of accessing any application was a desktop or a laptop. But now, these days, you have a lot of different types of devices which can access the internet. Your smartwatch, your iPad, your any tablets, anything right now can be like there are lots of even IoT devices. Even you have smart bulbs at your home now. So all of them needs to access the internet and maintain a session. Now with these all new devices, there is a problem. They do not have the concept of cookies in them. So if you buy a smart bulb, it doesn't have a browser which is going to maintain a cookie. If you buy an ipad can have a browser in it, but it can have also other applications in it also, like apps to maintain different, like your Instagram app or your Google Drive app. They all maintain your sessions. In those cases, even iOS or Android apps do not support cookies. So the concept of cookies only is limited to browser-based environments where you have a browser and then only you can use a cookie. So we needed a solution. The solution was JSON Web Tokens. So because JSON Web Tokens are stored on the system at some location, it can be stored in a file, it can be stored in the memory of the device, and that's why JSON Web Tokens are also being used as a replacement of sessions or cookies on a traditional web environment too. Okay, so I got a question. Every time the user logs in, the JSON Web Token will change? Yes, because the JSON Web Token also has information about when the token was created. So every token has an expiry time with it. So it can expire, like it depends on the library which you are using it. Some libraries create a token for 1 hour, some create it for 30 minutes, and you can configure that also. So you can say a token which I'm going to create, it's going to be valid for next 20 days or 10 days or whatever time I like to have. So in those cases, every time you are creating a login flow or you're completing a login, your token will change. It will have also the information about when the token will expire. Okay, any questions now? Any questions on the JSON Web Tokens? Okay, so I got a good question. Shall I use other person's JSON Web Token via Postman? Yes, you can. So you should be very careful that if you are leaving your system on your desk in your office. Let's say a very common security problem is you left your laptop on your desk in your office. You went to just get some drink, and by the time in that meanwhile, somebody your laptop is unlocked, and somebody came to your system, and what they did is they went to the Chrome and copied any token from it, for like they copied the token for Facebook. Now they can copy that token on their system and fake that you are logged into the application. So you should be very careful. If you have access to anybody's token, you can fake that this is the right, this is the same person. So if you uh, copy it from my system, you can fake that I'm Praveen and you can access Facebook or any other application. So this is a common thing with cookies also. Cookies can also be copied and replicated to other systems. So it's the common thing. So it's not something that JSON Web Token adds another kind of a problem to us. No, it's the same thing with cookies also. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I got a question. I'm working with the API and the term is called name as bearer. Yeah, so like I said, there are different libraries based on different languages or frameworks, which provides you these tokens. So some will say that you have to create a token, call it as authorization, and in that you have to pass in a bearer and a token ID. So it's just how your library uh, understands the token. But the main general concept is this only, that you have a token which gets validated by a signature. Now, how the library internally works with it, that something can be different across different libraries. Okay, so shall we do a demo of this also, like how this works? Okay, so let's see a demo of this, how this thing completely works. Uh, any other questions you have? Okay, so let me set up the project. Okay, so for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project today and start working with that. So let me, because we need a new project for the next session tomorrow. So we'll just create a new project over here. Just give me a minute. Okay, thanks, Sheikh, for sending the link. Actually, I was looking for that only. It's a new system, so I don't have the links on it. So I have to create a new system, project for that. Okay. We'll just download this project over here, the old one. Okay, yep, downloaded. Okay, here is the project. Okay, so I didn't create the new project, thanks to Sheikh, because I was not able to find the link for it on the system. So I have it now. Just give me a minute. Okay, so the project is ready. Let's open the Visual Code. Okay, so I have the project ready over here, and let's start the project. Just give me a second. facing issue with Angular CLI. Just give me a second. I need to make sure Angular CLI is working. Just give me a minute. Okay, so the project is ready. Let me do ng serve on it. Okay, the project is running now. Okay, so what we have is like, let's see how does the code implements on this specific scenario. So first of all, what we have to do is we have to implement uh, that how is the communication between your server and client will work with the first initial request. So for that, what it did was in the last session was, when you go to the login form, on the login form, there is a login service which we have. Sorry, it was in the part of your screen's login page over here. Okay, so send the request to the server. Now the server receives your request, and you can see over here how this has been implemented. So what I did is, first of all, I'm sending a request to the server saying I want to implement a login. The login request will have the form data. Now form data is going to have your email address and password with it. This goes to the server. Now the server will run the library. It will create a JSON web token and return you that. So that will come as a access token to us. So I will receive that as a response. Now my first step would be store this access token in the session storage or local storage. Ideally, it should be stored in the session storage. Once you do that, the next step would be like navigating the user to the URL which you want to show them. So most of the time when we log in, we take the user to a dashboard screen or a login like a home page where the user can see the details. In this case, what I was also doing is I'm setting up a behavior subject also. So what is a behavior subject? A behavior subject is a observer. This is going to be a value which other components can observe or listen to them. So why I need this? Because the login information can be used by multiple different components in my app. So you can use it in your uh, header, navigation, anywhere in your application you need to know which user is logged in, you can use this information. So I'm storing that in a behavior subject over here. So that has been created over here as an info behavior subject. And by default, I'm setting it as null because if the user is not logged in, so I can safely say it's a null user right now. There is no user information present right now. Now, once the user logs in, I can store the information about the user in the behavior subject. So on the behavior subject, when you need to assign new value or update the value, we call the next method on it. So we'll write behavior subject dot next. So call the next method. It will allow you to update the value. So once the value is updated, it will notify all the users, or sorry, all the components which are listening to the value. So in this case, I was using the header component and the navigation component. So over here, you can see I am listening to the data which is coming from the user service, from the user behavior subject, and subscribing to it. So whenever the data changes, it will let me know that who is the current user right now. And based on those information, I can show the name of the user or even show or hide links on the page. So in this case, I'm just showing the email address of the user. And the navigation component, I had links over here which were controlled by this. So when the user logs in, additional links were added. If the user logs in, then it shows you the logout button also. So because the user is now logged in, you have to log out the user. So it shows you that, okay, yeah, show the logout. If the user is not logged in, like the information is returned as null over here, like the behavior subject is not set to any value, in that case, it will show you the links for login and register. So the user can go to these pages and register or login and show the details over here. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, I think no questions on this. So I will show you how this code is working. The demo for it. So I have to start the API. So we'll run npm run dev server. Okay, go to Safari or any browser we have. We'll say localhost 4200 and it loads the application. So right now it shows you the links for login and register because the user has not logged in. Okay, so we'll click on this and we'll provide the information. So what information I can use? I have to check the db.json file. What users I have created. Give me a second. Where is the users list? Yep, I think I can use this one. Sign in. And now once the user logs in, it shows you the name of email address of the user and also a link to log out. So when you click on this, what it does is it will just delete the session token from the system and logs out the user from this now. Okay, so now any request which I'm going to send from this code, any request which I'm going to send from this code is going to have the token ID, or sorry, the JSON Web Token along with it. So let me show you another request. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Let's open inspect panel. In the inspect panel, go to network tab and refresh the page. So when you refresh the page, it will send request to the system, asks for details like the list of users. Now in this, scroll down and you will find that there will be a request header for the token also. Here it is. Yeah, access token, and this is the JSON token which is being stored. So this token is stored in the application session storage. It's been picked from here, and now with every request, it is being sent to the server. Now the server verifies this, and if the token is valid and it has been created by the same application, it will return the data. Otherwise, it will fail the request and give you a unauthorized error in that case. Now that's done. Now what the next thing would be that how is this token going to be sent with the request? So we have implemented interceptors. So interceptors are used for it. So in this code, you will find an interceptor over here. Access interceptor. Yeah. So this is the access interceptor, which was used for setting up the access token. So what this does is it intercepts the request and checks does your local does your session storage has the token over here. If it has the token, okay, if it has this token over here, then it will uh, continue ahead and clone the request. So clone request is a method on the request object. It will clone the request and set the access token as a header into it. So it has a prop method on it. On the clone request, it takes a parameter that what new headers you want to set. So you can set up new headers, and the new header which I want to set is the access token header, which will be sent from your client to the server side. So you read the access token, you attach the access token over here, and a new cloned request will be there. So clone request means that all the parameters which you have sent with the original request, they will be cloned, plus some new additional items you can add to it. So we can add headers to it. Similarly, we can also add parameters to it also, but parameters are not usually done like they usually set on this code. We'll set only headers, and we'll send this cloned request to the server. Instead of sending the original request, we are going to intercept it, clone it, and send the clone request to the server. Now the clone request goes to the server with the access token in it. Server verifies it and returns us the status. Okay, any questions? Guys, is it clear how the JSON Web Tokens work? Okay, so I got a question. Uh, Better, but not 100%. Will be confident when we do the coding for coding. For JSON Web Token, we haven't done any coding. Yeah, so JSON Web Token is something responsibility of a backend developer, and they will give you a API like a login API, which will return you the token. And for you, you have to just store the token and set up the interceptor. Same thing. So even in my project, when I work on any of the project, it's the same boilerplate code which I just copy paste from one project to another project and handle the token with it. There can be some special rules if they want, like what kind of token it is. All of those things are small customizations which you may have to handle in your code, but the concept remains the same for any place where you're implementing JSON Web Token. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so let's take a break for 2 minutes and then we'll join back and start working on implementing test cases. We'll see how test cases are done, and we're also going to see how a deployment code will be done. So first I will do the deployment of the code, and then I will write the test cases with you. Everyone, so let's continue. So now we're going to see how we can deploy our application. So like if you have already worked with web applications, so depends on what type of framework and solution you're building. So when you're working on a .NET application, you have to deploy a complete .NET solution to the server. Same for Java. So you have a Java Apache server, which will be configured for deploying a Java application. For Node.js applications, you have a Node.js server, which will host your application and store all the logic in it. But with Angular application, these applications are a little different because they don't need a server to be deployed on. Like they just need a HTTP server. So what is HTTP server and how it is different from others? So HTTP server is just a place where you can upload some static files, and those static files can be sent to your browser. Okay. When you say a .NET server also has a static application, but a .NET server will also run your C# code. A Java server runs a Java code and then returns the content from it. But in a case of an Angular application, we don't need all those fancy things. We need only a HTTP server which can host our files and users can request them. Now, we have worked with this complete setup in which we are using Angular CLI and running all those things. We don't need these. Yeah, we don't need this on a server-side application. So when you, on your deployment. So when you need to deploy this application, what you do is, I will show you a command over here in the terminal. So what you do is, you are in the project folder. See, over here, you run the command ng build. Okay, wait for it. It will create the deployable code from your system. And in the deployable code, you will find that over here. In the dist folder, you will find the dist folder, a new folder will be created over here. Based on the project name, it will create a folder over here, which will have all the static files in it. And these are the files which needs to be deployed on a server. So there are different cloud solutions for this also, or you can have any kind of a HTTP server which will be used for deploying them. So a very common thing which you can use on cloud, if you are familiar with the AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, they all have solutions for hosting web applications similar to these. So on an AWS environment, you can use AWS S3, or on your Azure environment, you can use object storage where you can upload static files and store them. In case of Google Cloud, you have Firebase with it, and in the Firebase, there is a feature which is called as hosting, and you can upload your files over there, and it will host your Angular files for that. So you don't have to compile the code on the server side. You just have to use these static files which are over here. So you can just open this folder and look for the files in it. Okay, so all of these files are going to be used in that case. Now, in our case, like I have to also do a demo for how this has to be deployed. So we are going to use a server which is called as Nginx. In our source content, we have a server to be used, which is called as Nginx. Nginx is an open source solution which allows us to deploy high performance applications like a high performance proxy or a HTTP server for our application to host. So there are lots of features which Nginx provides us, but we are going to just use the HTTP server from Nginx in this case. And now for using Nginx on our system, we are going to use another feature which is, or another application which is called as Docker. I'm going to just quickly set up a Docker instance and show you how that can be done. You can also set it up on your system too. The only catch is if you're using your Office system, the Docker has a licensing with it now. Earlier it was free, so I was telling everybody to install it. But now they have a licensing attached with it. So if you go to Docker Desktop is used for running the solution locally on your system. Okay, so just look for desktop here. There it is. Okay, so Docker Desktop allows you to set up a Docker server or a Docker environment locally on your system, but now it has a licensing cost. So if you're using your office laptop, just check the licensing cost with it. Otherwise, you may have to, that can be a big problem for your company. Okay, so if you are using your personal system, you can just use the personal setup for it, works fine. Even on your office laptops, if you're using the personal Docker Desktop personal, that can be also a problem. So just avoid that. Okay, so how do we use Docker in this case now? So Docker, how it works is, let me explain why we need Docker in this case. So Docker is a way of creating containers. So how does the application gets deployed on a server? So first of all, you will create your own code. So you will have your code which is called your binaries. This is your code which is going to be written by you as a developer. You're going to write all this binary code. Now this binary code will also have some dependencies. So these are called as your dependencies. So binaries can be all the custom logic which I'm writing, my business logic, and then you have dependencies to run that code. So maybe you have a dependency on Node.js, maybe you have a dependency on Golang to run your custom code. Okay. Now all of the code which you write, it has to deploy on an environment. It's not a magical code that you give it to a system and it will run. You need operating system also. So we'll have operating system. Okay. And then your code will run. So first of all, you will set up a system, your laptop or your desktop or any other server. It will have operating system on it. The operating system will install all the dependencies in it, and then you are going to run your custom code on it. So this is what we do right now, what I am doing right now on my system. Like I am on my laptop, but on a environment where you are deploying it on a cloud, there is another thing which gets added over here. So on a cloud, uh, we get systems like you go to AWS and you can get a EC2 system from them. Now, EC2 system is a virtual machine. What's a virtual machine? Like you have a laptop which is very powerful, and you need to use, like I'm using Mac, and I also need to use Windows on it. So what I can do is I can create a virtual environment which can run Windows on this laptop. Okay, so this is the same thing which is deployed on your server side. So your servers, like AWS has like very powerful servers which have lots of resources attached to them. Now these servers are going to be split into smaller chunks. So not everybody needs a huge data center kind of a server. You just need a small server to run your application. So you can say, AWS, give me a server which is having this basic configuration. So what it does is, it has your server like this. So AWS will have a server which is called as a metal server or bare metal server. Okay, it's nothing special. It's just a physical server which is deployed in the data center. Now this bare metal server will have another layer on top of it, which will be the operating system. Okay, this will be an operating system which will run that metal server, and on top of it, you will have a hypervisor. Okay. Hypervisor is a solution which allows you to create virtual machines on it. Okay, then on top of it, then you will have your operating system which you have requested AWS to provide you. So when you are asking AWS that give me a server, then AWS will ask you that what kind of server you need. Do you need operating system on it? You will say, yeah, I need a Windows operating system on it. So this will be your VM operating system, which operating system your virtual machine is going to use. Okay, and now then your dependencies and your code is going to run. So why I'm covering this in an Angular session? The reason is we should know that how app deployments are done, and sometimes we are using a fancy machine which is not available on your server side. So I'm using a Mac machine, but the servers which are generally used, they are running Ubuntu or Linux or Windows or Linux, or I would say just Unix, Linux, or Windows operating systems. The problem with this kind of scenario is I may have Mac OS, which is the latest OS right now for Mac, but the deployment is done on a Ubuntu machine, and the the way how the code is going to be running on those systems may be different. So sometimes even we as a developer make a joke that it's running on my system, why it's not running on your system then? So it's the same thing. So when you have a code which is specifically designed for operating system or a specific environment, when you deploy it on different types of environments, it can easily break. So what we need to do is we need to create a solution which is called as a container. So a container is kind of a box like this, and it encapsulates your code and your dependencies into it, and also provides you your operating system level things, like your code may depend on features from your operating system, your file system. So what it does is it will also have APIs for the operating system, so it will have the OS for you also here. Okay, so this whole container is going to be used for deploying your application. The benefit of this is everything is all bundled into one single solution. So now if I run this on my laptop, it will work the same way how it's going to work on a server side also. So we use a solution called as Docker for creating these containers. Once the container is created locally on my system, it's called as an image. This image will be sent to your AWS or any of the other cloud providers. They will run that image and create a container from them on their platform and run my application with it. So we're going to see how this whole process of creating containers and deploying this code will work. So first of all, I will go back to my Angular project. I have to create a file in it, which is called as the Docker file. This Docker file will have the instructions of how to create the Docker image. Image is kind of a executable code or a way of creating your container. So here we're going to define what we want to use. So I want to deploy an Angular application with it. So I will use Nginx image as a base image for this. So I'll write not highlighting. Yeah. So here we need to create a base image. So I'll write uh, from. So from which existing image I want to create a base image. So I will pick Nginx. So from the Nginx image, I want to create my own Nginx image from it. Okay, so it's like a package which gets downloaded on my system, and this will configure how the Nginx system will run on my locally on my system now. So where is this image going to come from? So this image is going to come from Docker Hub. So you will go to Docker Hub and you will find there are lots of images available over here. So like if you want to use Postgres, if you want to use Nginx, Python, so you will find different types of images over here. These images are going to have the complete dependencies to run that particular feature on your system or as a container. Now, very careful, you should be very careful about this, that there are going to be like hundreds of thousands of images on Docker Hub. Be very careful about which image you are using. So only prefer to use the images which are official images or issued by your verified publishers. So there will be a list of verified publishers also. The reason is, if you build your own application based on an image which has some code to hack code or add some malicious code into your application, then that code can have a very negative impact on your uh, application too. So do not trust anyone on the Docker Hub. Just see if you have a verified publisher, or you know the person who is deploying this image is a person who is good and they will not add any malicious code into the image. You should only trust those. So for me, I just prefer to use any of the official images, verified, or the open source images over here. So there are lots of other open source images. Somebody has deployed them. So we are going to use the Nginx image, which will provide the Nginx environment. Now, on this image, we have to define a working directory, a place where my code will be deployed. So I will say I will deploy my code on the folder, which is going to be called as HTTP. Okay. Now, next step would be copy all the code which is right now in my project to the Docker image. So what we'll do is we'll say copy, and all the code which is currently in my project folder into this project folder over here. One thing I should call it as application, or yeah, this is fine. Okay. Now copy all the code from the project folder into the Docker image. So what does this mean? So a Docker is a container. So it's a encapsulated container which will have your operating system, dependencies, and a file system also. So this is a read-only file system. So you can only upload files once into it, and then you cannot change them. So when I'm creating the image, I have to provide all the files which I want to add into it. So I will provide my whole complete project into it. Okay, once done, I will say run a command which is npm install to install all the dependencies of the project. And then I will say npm run build. So to create the build for this code, and we are going to write a production build. Okay, so that's the first step. Now, once this is done, what we're going to do is we're going to copy this code from one location to another image also. So this is the first image which is going to create the code bundle. So I will write that I want to use the latest Nginx version, so I didn't add that. And I will also write a name for it. So I will call it as node, or call it as compile. So this is the place where the code gets compiled. Okay. Now from this, I want to create another image. So I will again write from, sorry, my mistake. It should be node over here. Now we're going to use the Nginx image. So first of all, I'm using the image for Node.js, creating the compiled code from here. Then I'll use the Nginx image, and from here I want to use a version which is called as Alpine, and I want to copy from. So I want to copy all the code from the compile stage into my image, which is going to be, which code I want to compile is from the application folder. In the application folder, it will have a dist folder in it, and the dist will have a folder which is called as Edureka News. So I'll copy this to a new location that is going to be the user folder on my system on the Docker image, because Docker image is also going to have a file system. So we'll write on the user folder in the share Nginx HTML location. So on this location, I want to copy all the code which is there. Okay, so once this image is done, now the next step for me would be just to create the image. So what we'll do is We'll open terminal. In the terminal, I have to run the Docker build commands for this. So I'll run Docker build. The name of the build, like I can write a name for it. So I can just write a custom name over here, like Eureka, and this is going to be Eureka news, like this. Okay, and all the code, right at the last you have to write dot. That will means that all the code, or the current location. So it will look for the current location. So that will be the current project folder which I'm in right now. So run this. So it will start the compilation of the code. Okay, so I got error, got permissions denied while trying to connect to Docker daemon. So yeah, so I don't have the Docker desktop running on my system. So I have to first install that and run that. So it's already installed on my system. So I'll just run that. Give me a second. Where is it? It is. So once you run Docker desktop, it will start the Docker daemon, and that will control the Docker images on your system. So this kind of application will load, and this will also allow you to run the Docker commands on your system. Okay, so it's still in starting phase. So let's wait for it to complete. Okay, so it started. So this Docker container, this Docker desktop shows you the list of all the Docker images which are created. So right now there is no image, it's a new setup. All the storage volumes, like if you want to attach a reusable storage volume, all the containers which are running. So containers are the applications which are running on your system. So now first step for me is to create the image. So I will run the build command again. So that will create a Eureka image for Eureka news. Okay, let's build this. And what it does is, first of all, my system does not have the base images on it right now. So it will send a request to Docker Hub and download the base images. So it's right now downloading the base images on my system. So once they're done, so it will start compiling the code and create an image from it. So let's wait for a minute for this. Okay, so I've sent you the command for running this build command on your system. Here it is. So now, once the complete build has been done, so you will find that it ran on my commands, which I gave it to create the build, and all of the things have been done. So I I'll go back to Docker desktop, go to images, and you will find there is a new image available over here. So this image is called as Eureka/Eureka News, and now I can run this. So right now, this is the executable code which is not running. So it's just a code on my system right now. So its size is 22 MB. And now I will say run this code. So when I run this code now, I will just say it will map port number 8080. So what happens is when you're running a Docker container, the container is going to behave like a separate system. It's not going to be the same system as your laptop or your desktop. It's going to behave like a separate system. Now in that case, it will have its own network ports on which the application will run. And when you need to communicate between your laptop and the Docker container, you have to define specific ports for it. So right now, the Nginx container, the Nginx image exposes a port number 88 on the system. This port number 80 has to be mapped to the network port on my laptop also. So what I'm doing is I'm saying when I'm writing when I'm calling localhost 8080, it should actually call the containers 80 port right now. So it's mapping a connection between my laptop's port with the containers port. So now when I say run, and the code is now running. So over here, you will see icon, go open with browser, or you can go to your browser and say localhost 8080 and run this, and you can see the whole code which has been deployed inside the Docker container is running right now. So this is not running through the Angular CLI. This is the final code which has been deployed and bundled inside a Docker image, and it's running as a container on my system. Okay, now good thing about this is I can create like multiple containers of this. I can load balance this. So there are lots of concepts in Docker which can be used for scaling this application much more faster. Okay, so you can try this out if you have your Docker set up on your laptop or your system. Create a Docker file like this. Run the Docker. No, sorry, use this one. Uh, Run the Docker build command. Create a build that will create an image for your Nginx code, and then run that as a container. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so I haven't got any questions, so I'll just wait for another 5 minutes. You can try this code. The simple steps are create a Docker file, copy the code into that file. First, it will create a Node.js image. It will run the Node.js, creates a executable or a build code from it, then copies that code into Nginx image and provides it to run that application. So it will copy the code from the compile stage. So this is called as a stage. Copies from there into the Nginx location, and once the image is created, you can go to Docker desktop and run that image to see how the application runs on your browser. So you can map, when you run this, you can map which port the port number 80 of the Docker container should be connected to. Okay, so I will give you 5 minutes for this, then we'll continue. Okay, so I got a question, how to create a Docker file. A Docker file, you have to just right click and create a new file. There is no CLI command for it. Just right click and name it as a Docker file. No extension, just name it as Docker file. Okay, so shall we continue and see how testing can be done? Okay, so I got a question. Should we run the docker build t command? Or else we don't have Docker. So if you don't have Docker on your system, the build will not work. So for this, you have to install Docker desktop on your system, and then only you can use this. Okay, so let's continue then. I think no questions on Docker. If you are interested in Docker, there is a lot of resources on Docker, how it can be used for backend development. It's also useful when you are creating applications across different types of environments. So it's very useful. And there is also a very uh, popular demand for it in the market right now. So for creating applications or containerized applications using Docker and Kubernetes. All right, so let's continue and see how we can write test cases in this code. So I will stop the Docker setup on my system. Yeah, so if you're not using Docker on your system, please stop that. It takes a lot of resources. So it's better to stop it if you're not going to use Docker right now. So we'll close all the files. And now we need to see how we can write test cases for our code. So what is a test case? So let's understand what do we need to implement. So as a developer, when you're developing a code, you will develop the code based on a requirement. Your manager or your product owner or somebody from your team is going to define those requirements, that what kind of thing we are building. Now those requirements are going to be also needed, they are also needed to be validated. Like if you have created a login form, so is the login form properly working, is the API properly working? So you have to verify all of these things. Now a very simple step to this is, as a developer, there are three types of testing we can do. So we can do in unit testing. Unit testing is where you can test each of the things individually. So like let's say I've created a component. So I have a component which is called as apply account. So I can write a unit test case for testing this component. So which will test this code for me. Okay. Next would be a functional testing, where this component has to be integrated with some API, and we want to test, is the component working properly with the API and is it giving me the right results. And the last is your end-to-end testing. End-to-end testing is where you have deployed the code on an environment and you are testing it with your mock database, and seeing if the APIs are properly be triggered, if the UI is properly working, and things are properly set up in your code. So first, in the Angular code, earlier it used to have a support for end-to-end testing inbuilt into it. It was called as Protector. Uh, what it does is it provides you the setup for how to write end-to-end test cases in the code itself. That has been removed now. The Angular team has removed that feature and says like there are other tools which you can use. So the tools which you can use is one is Cypress for end-to-end testing, and there is another one which is called as Playwright. So these are the tools which you can use for doing end-to-end testing for your Angular applications. Okay, so we'll see. We'll set up Cypress in this project and do testing based on Cypress for end-to-end in it. Okay. Now that's the end-to-end testing part. So what about unit testing now? So in your project, you will find that every component has a spec file with it. So there is a spec.ts file. So this file is for implementing unit test cases. Unit test cases are like the name says, it's for a unit or a particular small feature which you are implementing, not for the whole application, just for one single thing which you are implementing in it. So if I'm creating this component, all the test cases specific to this component are going to be implemented in it. Okay, so how this thing actually works now. So first, what we'll do is we'll stop the server, and here we'll run the command ng test. Let's see what does it provides us now. So ng test is going to run the unit test cases. So it's going to go through all the spec files and provide us a report of how the code has been running. Okay, so now in this case, it's going to give me a lot of errors because the test cases which are by default created, they have not been updated based on the new requirements which we have done in the project. So that is going to actually break our test case part. So it's not going to run directly over here. So what you have to do is you have to go to each of the component and make sure the logics in them are properly implemented. So that's going to take a lot of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a new project, uh, create a new project over here using terminal. We'll say ng new, and the name of the project will be testing demo, and the prefix for this is going to be test. Let's wait for it to complete. Okay, it's installing the packages. Let's wait. Okay, package installation is done. Now we need to open this new project and we'll use the code. Where is this project created? It's in the user folder. So it's called as testing demo. Once again, let me open this project. Okay, so I have the new project and Visual Studio Code over here, and same thing. Just I will open now. I'll open the terminal and say run the command ng test on it. Okay, now you will see the report has only one test case, which says, just zoom in over here. So it says that there is only one component which is there, and there are three test cases which have been tested on this component. So it has tested that the component has a render title in it, the component should start, and it should have a title in it, which is called as testing demo. Okay, so what does this do over here? So what we're doing is we're testing the app component. So right now there is only one thing in the application to test, the app component over here. So go to the spec file in it. Now every component or anything which you're building in your code will have a spec file, so you can disable it also. So it is up to you that do you want to create a test case for that file or not. So you can pass in a parameter flag that to disable the spec file for any component which you are creating. But by default, all the files will all the building blocks will create a spec file with them. Now a spec file will have instructions of how to first of all structure the test case. So this file is called as a suite. So this is a test suite which we are running. In this, we have a describe block. Describe block tells the system that what we are testing. So I'm testing app component. So you can call it as anything. You can write your own description over here. So just to be more friendly to know that what we are testing over here. So I'm testing app component. Now each test case which I want to implement in it is going to be defined as a it block in it. So we'll write it and what it should do in the code. So it's going to test a component. It should test a component by clicking on something or doing some kind of a activity in it. So we'll have it blocks in it. And each of them, when you have these it blocks, they will have you can have a before each also and after each also. So before each is going to be used for setting up the test environment, because we are testing Angular specific code. So it requires a Angular environment to be created. In that environment, it tests the code and then clears the environment after that. So as a best practice, we have to create the Angular environment every time we are running a test case, so that it does not have any side effect on the test cases which are running together in the project. Okay, so how does this work? Let's see. So in the before each, we are using the test bed. So test bed is the environment on which the Angular test case is going to run. On it, we need to configure a testing module. So we have an Angular module, the app module, which has been used for creating the application structure. So in this case, we are going to use a testing module. So this is going to have the similar features, but this is only going to be used for testing environment. So create a testing module. Now our project depends on the Angular routing also. So we also need the routing module to be added into it. And then which components do we need to test? This test case over here is a unit test case, which is going to test the app component. So it has only the declaration for app component over here. But if the app component has further nested components in it, you may have to add them over here in the declaration section. Okay, at the last you will say compile the components. It will go through all the components, compile them, and then make them ready for testing. Now let's uncomment this code. Now let's pick out only one of the test cases. So let's say I want to test over here. So what do we have as a test case over here? So it says it should sorry, it should create the app. So means it should create the application for us and verify if the app component is loaded or not. So how it's going to done? We have the test bed. Test bed is the testing environment. You're going to create a component on it. So that's like compiling the component. And we're going to pass which component we want to run over here. So we're going to pass the app component. And once this code runs, it creates the instance of the component, which is called as a fixture. Now on this fixture, we get the component instance, and we're going to just check if the component instance is truthy or falsy. And that is done through the expect statement. So we're going to expect that the app or the component instance is going to be truthy. Truthy means anything which is having a true value. So it can be a number one, it can be a positive object, it can be an array, it can be a string, anything which is a positive value in the JavaScript code, that will be truthy over here. So it's just going to check that does this code returns an object. It doesn't check that what kind of component it is, how internally it works. It just checks that do I get a component when I run, or do I get an object when I run this code. So that will be returned over here, and this will be assigned as true. So let's see, in the report over here, you can see it shows that app component should create app. Okay, so that's for loading the component. Let's see other kind of things which we can do test on it. So let's say I have this template. It's a very common thing. In your template, you have lots of items written, and you want to verify them, are they properly added or not. So in our case, let's say I have a p tag. In this p tag, I have another span tag, or a span tag added over here. Sorry, in this span tag, we're going to write something over here. Let's say a message. Okay, and this message is going to come from a property. We'll write a property in the component as a type of string, and it's going to be called as hello world, like this. Okay, so will this property show over here? Yes, I know by looking at this code, this should work properly fine. But how do I test this now? What is the proof that this will properly work? So we'll use the test case for setting that up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to verify if the message is being shown on the page or not. So here, I'm just going to write a description for it, that what we are uh, going to test over here. So I will just write it should message in. Okay. Now, how do we implement that? First of all, we need to load the component that we already have done. Then it's going to provide us the component instance that we already have. Now, what has to be done over here is on this component, let's rename it to component. And what I want to do is on this component, I want to look for a element. So which element is this text in? So it's in a span tag. What I will do is, okay, so I'll write span. On the component, there is a query selector which we can use. We have to use fixture dot element dot query selector. So the query selector is going to run a CSS query and look for elements on the page. So write which element I want to look for. I want to look for the span tag. So in this particular component, where is the span tag available in the code? So look for that. Now, on this span tag, I can expect what is the text on it. So I can expect span dot text content to be equal to, so, or to be what it should be equal to. It should be equal to hello world, like this. Okay, so now when I run this code, it returns an error. Let's see what's the problem over here. So it says expected empty string to be equal to hello world. Okay, so what is the text content which we are getting over here then? Okay, let's test this out. Console. Okay, so it's printing out empty over here. It's message over here, and it's also message over here. Okay, that's correct. Okay, so why is the test case? Let's see. We have component, test wait component. We have that properly. We have the picture, which is going to provide us the native element. Native element has the query selector on it, which is the span tag, and it's looking for this. Okay, so it returns a span over here. Did I do a typo on this? Okay, let me do one thing. Over here, when I'm writing the span, let's implement the span directly and describe with a let keyword. And we'll say the span is going to be a HTML element like this. And we're going to write over here. And let's see what methods it has. So it has a text content method on it. Okay, the reason is, so in this case, why it's not working, it's returning me an empty value. Let's do one thing. Let's hard code the value over here. So I know it's going to be hello world. Let's write hello world over here. Will this work properly or not? Yep, it kind of worked. It says it's not equal to compare. It's not able to compare hello world with hello world. The reason is it has empty spaces in the starting and the ending over here. So what we can do is we can write the test case to not to use to be, but to use to contain over here and say hello world. Okay, and now the test case works. So why is it not working in our case when I'm assigning with the property? The reason is, let's back to the property again. Okay, so how a test case runs is the test case goes through multiple lifecycle hooks also. Like your component goes through lifecycle hooks, your test case also has to check different lifecycle hooks in that case. So when this component loads for the first time, it has the message value over here. It has to show the message value. But at this time, the message value is not available in the TS code. So it will be like a property which is not available. And once the component has been initialized, then only the value will be there. So there is a little bit delay in that. In that case, the component test case runs before it and shows you error that it's not able to pick the value properly in the template. So what we should do is whenever we think that a value is going to be updated or it's going to be shown on the page, we should call a method on the fixture that will detect changes on it. So over here, I will say, I know that I want to value or check the value. So before that, I just say fixture dot detect changes. So it will look for the new changes which are happening on the page and then continue the further code after that. So now when I run this code, now you can see the both test cases are working fine. So it's able to show the message on the view, and it's also able to verify the component has been loaded. So this way you can make sure your component works properly by checking out the content in it, what is the values in it which are being passed. So in this case, what I can do is I know my component has a property also which is called as message. So I can write the text which you are finding on the template, it should match with the message property of the component. So that will point to this message property of the component, because this component is the instance of it. So that's going to have the same value, and we can compare that if the TS code has some value, is it being properly shown in the HTML also. Okay, so this way you can verify that. So try this out. Ideally, I would say create a new project and run this test case in it, because the earlier projects which we have, they have lots of test cases in it which are failing, and it's going to take a lot of time to make them properly work. So create a new project, run these, and then we'll continue. Any questions you have, let me know. Now, guys, I'll give you 5 minutes for this. Try this on your system. I've sent you the code for the test case, and then continue. This is the code for the template, and this is the code for the test case code. So the TS file. Okay, hi everyone. So let's continue. So we have seen how we can test simple property which is on the component and make sure it shows up properly on the screen. Now, next thing would be like, let's say you're creating a form in it, and when you click on a button, you have to check that the form is being like properly submitted, or like does it capture the values in it. So we'll create a small form in it. Let's say the name of this control would be name, and that will be email, like this. Okay. Now, when I type in something in this control, I want to check that is it being received in the property or not. So we'll create a button over here. Okay. We'll call it as login. Okay. Uh, to receive a property into my TS code also, I write ng model. I'm going to do two-way data binding, so I write ng model over here and call this as email. Okay, ng model will not work because I don't have the forms module set up. So we'll set that up over here. So in the app module file, let's say I want to import the forms module. Okay, so now this is working. Now, the thing which I want to test over here is, let's say when this user is going to see this component, they are going to fill in their email address into the input box. And when they click on the button, that value should be sent to a service. So we're going to test that. So first, I'll click on this button and write handle click method also. Okay, and that's going to be implemented in the TS code. And we also need a property which is going to be called as email, which is going to be a string value is empty, so that this value should be stored somewhere on the TS code. Okay, so the test cases are failing right now. So it says can read properties of null. That's fine. Okay, nothing wrong in the component. Looks good. Okay, so the test case over here is failing because I don't have a box span tag on the page. Okay, so we'll just comment this test case, and now we're going to write a new test case over here. We'll say it should allow user to add email. So we're going to simulate how a user is going to type an email into this control. We're going to write a new test case. Like this. We're going to write that first of all, I need to create a fixture for the component. So from the test environment or the test bed, we're going to say test bed dot create component. Which component we want to create? That is going to be the app component. And now on this, we're going to write that which control I want to pass in the value to. So that will be my input. So I'll write input over here. and we also have a button which the user is going to click. So what are the values? Where are these going to be received from? So first of all, from this test uh, fixture, I need to get these two controls. So I write fixture dot native element dot query select. Okay, and it's going to pick the input box. The second would be using the same, but we're going to pick the button over here. Okay, so these are the two elements which we need to work with. So now what I will do is, let's say I want the user to type in their email address into it. So over here I'm going to update the input box's value with the value I have. So it's better to have a data type on them. So the data type will be HTML input element. On this input type, input control, I can write assign a new value to the control. So I can write C at def. So this is the new value which the input control will have now. Okay, so once this is done, then what we have to do is we have to uh, tell the Angular code that the value has been updated. So Angular will not automatically know this change has been done. We have to forcefully tell Angular that this change has been done over here. So we'll say input dot dispatch event, and we're going to create a new event over here. And what type of event it is? It's going to be a input event, okay, or a change event which you want to do. Okay, and that is going to trigger a new event. Now what we can do is, now we have this input value which has been updated into the control, and we want to verify, is it being passed into the TS code also? Is the connection between the TS code and the template code is working fine, like the using the ng model? Okay, so whatever value I'm going to pass from here, it should go to the TS code over here and receive in the email, and that is going to be checked done through the component over here. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to say I want to also load the component on the text bed. We're going to, no, sorry, on the fixture, I'm going to say fixture dot component. Okay. And now once the change has been done, the value has been updated. Here I'm going to say fixture, sorry, component dot email should equal to the input dot value. Okay, and we're going to write an expect statement on this. We're going to expect that the message to be equal to input dot value. So whatever the value of the input is, should be seen as the components property. And we run this code, and we got this value over here. It says hello world to be equal to uh, ABCDEF. Okay, let's see why. So what is this component? Yeah, my bad. Actually, it has to be component dot email. And now we run this code again, and it says object empty is equal to abc.ef. Okay, so why again this is happening? Because now when I have updated the value by triggering the event, the test case is not picking it up. So it has to call the fixture dot detect changes. So it will check like do you have any changes on the code? Now it should work fine. Okay, again it says yes. 1 second. Okay, what I think is the reason for this is happening because the two-way data binding is not working over here because my component is dependent on the forms module for two-way data binding. So that's not been added over here. So I will import the forms module into the test case and make it available in this code. And now you can see the test case has passed. So we have to be very careful that the environment in which the actual component is running, what modules and what services are available, they should be also available in the test case also. So my mistake, what I was doing, I was not adding the forms module, but trying to do two-way data binding in it. If I try to do two-way data binding without the forms module, it will give an error. And that was happening in this case. So when I added forms module over here, now it can verify that the user, when the user types in something, it also receives that as a property in the code. Okay, so try this out. If you have any questions on it, let me know. Try this code, and if you have any questions on it, let me know. Okay, so I got a very good question. Are test cases mandatory in the course in the project? Uh, yeah, sure. You should write few of the test cases. It's not mandatory, but you should actually try to practice out some test cases because they are very important in your actual projects in your company. You will have this kind of a request in it. Okay, so any questions on this test case where we are filling out a control and we are verifying if the value has been passed into the TS code? Okay, so now we're going to write test cases for testing if the component has a specific style used on them. So this is again very important. So when you are showing some content, there may be some scenarios where you have a range of values, and for each range of value, you have to show a specific style or color for them. So let's see how that can be done. So let's say I'm creating this component again. Now in this component, if I type in value which is more than 10, I should show a tag, and the color of the value in the span tag should be in red color. So it should say error, and it should be in the red color. If the value is less than 10, then it should show the value in the span tag as success, and it should be in the blue color. Okay, so I just create a let's say validation, and let's write the logic for it. So by default, the validation value should be a string which is going to be equal to empty string. Now let's do one thing. Let's say I type in the control. So in this input box, whenever I type in it or whenever the model changes, it should show the color change over here. So how that can be done? But here we can write a simple condition also. Like even we don't need even a property over here. What I can do is I will say email, and if the email value is going to be less than 10 characters, actually we can write like this. If the email dot length is going to be less than 10 characters, we're going to show error, and otherwise we are going to say all or success. Okay, like this. So this is going to print that if the email value which I've typed in, if it is less than 10 length, 10 characters, it will show error. Otherwise it will show success. Okay, that's good. So why is the test case failing now? Because of this code which we have written over here. This should be a ternary operator. Now this should be fine. Okay, and the color of this should also be changed. So we can write ng style over here. Okay, in the ng style, I will write that the color of this particular value should be based on the email dot length. If it is less than 10, it should be in red color. If it is more than 10, it should be in blue color. Okay, till now the code is compiled properly, so that's working good. Now let's write a test case for it. So what we'll do is we'll create another test case, and we'll kind of need the same thing. So don't need the button, we don't need the component, and we can write, we can say over here the test case should show error in red if email is less than 10 chars, like this. Okay, so how do we test this now? So we have the input box. Now let's because the user cannot type anything into it, I have to type something from my code now. So the same flow. So we'll write input dot value, and once the input dot value is done, we'll say dispatch the input event, and then we'll call fixture dot changes, same thing. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the value is not more than 10 characters. So we'll write 1 2 3, that's 4 characters, 5 6 7 dot 9 characters total. Okay, so this is 9 characters, not 10, so it should show a error message on the screen. Okay, how do we check then that? So for this, how do we check that what is the value in the span tag over here? So we do one thing, we'll do the same logic. Well, on the fixture, we're going to look for the span tag. So do we have the span tag? Yes. Now we're going to look for the colors on it. So what color are there on the span tag? So before that, we'll first check what is the text content of it. So we have expect span dot text content to contain, what should it contain? Error. Okay, let's test this out. And yep, it works fine. So it shows over here we can see should show error in red if the email is less than 10 characters. Yeah, so at least we can test that the error is going to be shown up in the text box. Okay, let's write something wrong over here. Let's make sure I'm typing more than 10 characters. So here, if I type more than 10 characters, it's not failing. So let's check the content of it. Okay, so it's printing out error in it. So is my logic not correct then? Okay, once again, we can test out by saying component. On the component instance, let's check the value, what we get for the email in this case. Okay, it's printing an empty string on this. So in Gmodel has the value, it prints out hell length on this. Okay, give me a second. Okay, so it's not assigning the value we have the form. Why? Okay, so the problem is with the code, it's not picking up the value. I have to see because okay, we'll look into the next session, like why in the next session why this is not working. And it should actually provide me the input value over here, and then I can just check that what is the current value in the text box on the span tag. So by changing the value, like passing in some value from here, I should be able to test out different scenarios, like what is the color of the text on the screen, what is the text in it. So those things can be tested in this case. But I think this code has some issue. We'll check in the next session tomorrow that why this is not working. Same way, like the way we write test cases for service components, you can also write test cases for services. So let's say I create a service over here and generate service in the services folder, and create a service over here, like call it as user. Okay. Now on this service also, you will get the same kind of a behavior. So you will get a describe block for what service it is, the before each in which you are going to configure the test module. So this service uh, doesn't depend on any of the component or any other modules. So we'll say this is an empty module, and we're going to inject the user service into it. So this is a manual step. So any services which you're going to use, we have to inject them into our test case. Now on this service also, like when we create a service, we have different properties and methods on it which we want to test. So here, very simple. Let's say I have this user service and it has a method in it like get users, and I want to check like what does this get users is going to return me. So I can call a API from it. So I can make a HTTP API request and see what is the data being returned from that code. Is it returning me observable, and is the observable going to provide me the data in the future or not? Okay. So first we'll try with the basic one. So let's say I want to test that when I call the get users, it returns me a null value. So very simple. So we'll create a new test case over here. So it should return null if no users. So we'll just try to see how this works. Right from the service. In this, I will say I want to expect that when I call the service is a method of get users, and I will call that get users method. And what is the result of it? So I'll say to be equal to null like this. So it will call the get users method, check what is the result on it, and returns me is it correct or not. Okay, so on the test case, say ng test. When I run the ng test, it will automatically pick the test cases, and over here it will show me that there is a new test case which is executed for the user service, and it tells me that okay, yeah, there is this test case which has been passed and returns null if there is no user. So yeah, I can say something else like this here. In that case, it will return an error. I can just say to be truthy. Where null is a negative value, and if I set truthy, it will show me that okay, so you're checking null to be a truthy value. So this way, we can just verify if our service is returning some data or not. Okay, and then now in this case, if I want to check if my API has been returning the right data or not, in the test cases approach, we do not test the actual APIs. What we do is we create HTTP mocks. So we're going to see how we can mock the HTTP service and get results based on it. So let's try the code for it. So for mocking the HTTP, so first of all, we have to import the HTTP testing module. So because we want to use the HTTP client, now in this case, we don't use the HTTP client directly. We use the HTTP testing module in it. So write HTTP/testing, and over here, we write HTTP client testing module. And this module has to be imported in our test bed. So write imports, and it's going to use the client testing module, okay, like this. Okay, so till now it is running. Yeah, that's all good. Now let's say I have an API call which has to be mocked in this case. So what I have to do is, first of all, I have to mock the API. So I should not be sending a actual request to the server to see if the API is running or not. because it will take a lot of network latency, and test cases should be running in a as fast as possible way, so we don't waste time on getting data. And other thing is the data can change on the actual server a lot of times, and your test case should always run on the same data set. So you have to create a mock for that. So here I'll say I want to create a mock for HTTP. It's going to be HTTP testing controller. Okay, and now we're going to use this as our mock. So over here, let's say when I call the get users, it should make a request to some service and get data from there. So what we'll do is we'll say over here we're going to create a request object, and we'll write http.mock, and we should expect a request for it. So we are going to try to make a request to JSON placeholder, and we're going to make a request to this users API. So instead of actually calling the users API, I will make a mock request to it. So first of all, let's configure the service with it. So over here, I want to say I want to make a request. So we go HTTP client. We got the HTTP client over here. We're going to say this is going to return this dot HTTP dot get the data from this users API. Okay, perfect. So the test case is over here. We'll remove this expect statement. Okay, so we're going to expect that there is a call which has been sent to this URL. Right, so that's done. Now, when is this call going to be done? So it's going to be done when I'm going to call the service dot get users method over here. Okay. Now, at this point, I should be also able to send some mock data into the code. So I have to create some mock data. So let's say I have a mock data, which is an array, and this has one object in it. It is called as name, and value of this is Praveen. Okay. So this is my mock URL. So what I'm trying to do is I'm forcing the HTTP client that if the service triggers the API request, instead of sending the request to the actual server, create a mock for it, create a dummy internal request and handle that. So I'm telling the HTTP mock that expect for a one single call to be sent to this URL, and you have to capture that. Okay, so I'll say request dot flush. Flush means that what data I want to send to it. I want to send this mock data as a result to it, and then I'm going to say expect that what we have received. So here I want to check that is the request dot method, any request has been triggered, and the method of that is being assigned as. Let's see, does it runs the code? Okay. Next would be we have to check expect that yeah, we'll check this later, but first we have to make sure this runs properly. So over here in the service code, I will import the HTTP client also. Okay, let's see which test case fails. So it says cannot read properties of undefined reading expect one. So something is a problem when I'm reading expect one over here. So this is the mock. On the mock, it should have the expect one property on it. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the reason is I didn't added the assignment to this. One second. Okay. So I expected one of the matching request for the match URL. Okay, once again. Okay, so it's not receiving this call. Let me check. Okay, so something is again like creating a problem over here. So ideally it should listen to this. So HTTP mock over here, this is the HTTP controller. So what it should do is whenever I'm calling the get service over get users over here, it should mock that request, and whatever data is over here, it should be returned into that request, and we can just verify if the request is working or not. Oh, sorry. In this case, it's not listening to the URL or somehow. Okay, I have to check this out, like why this problem is coming. In the next session, I think I should be able to answer this problem, like why this particular thing is not behaving like this over here. And we'll fix that in the next session tomorrow. If you have any questions, any queries, you can let me know right now from anything in the course. In the tomorrow session, we'll try to fix out the errors in the test cases, and we're going to start a new project from scratch to see end-to-end development of the things. So there is already a requirement in the session. So if you go to the batch content, over here in the course content, there is an in-class project which is there. So we're going to try to complete this in-class project or come to a point where we know that how the project has been set up, and we may not be able to complete it properly, like end to end, but we will be able to set up a whole project and see different things working in it, like authentication or different parts of the page. Okay, any questions you have right now? Okay, so what's the query about the assignment? Is it about this one? So you have to tell me which assignment it is. Yep. So what's the question on this? Oh, yes, you can. I will send you the request.
बनाना है क्वालिटी भी अच्छी है तो एक टॉप अच्छी बनते थे पहले भी अच्छी बनते थे
The audio is not working. Can you check?
प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I
Can
can
you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I have shown the list of product as per the assignment, but when I
Yeah.
click on view detail, it is not redirecting on my detail page.
Okay. So what is the behavior of this?
And this is the page.
No. What do you do on the click? What is the logic on the click?
Actually, as you have tell in a assignment that when you have to show the detail page on clicking on view details, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know how to write the code about that.
So when you click on the view details, it will take you to a new page, a new URL. So
Yes.
it will be anchored.
It will be anchored, yes.
Yeah.
But when I click on view detail, I got the ID into that.
Where is no?
But
So you have
it
to
comes
create
only
an
once.
anchor tag. You have to create an anchor tag. That anchor tag will take you to a new route, and that route will be for the view detail route.
I got the ID, this ID.
No, this will not work. So you have to actually create an anchor tag, create a new route,
Okay.
and on the new route which you have, that will be the detail route, and on that will show the detail page for you.
Yeah, this is correct. Or anchor tag.
Yeah, anchor tag. No. You have to create a route. So you don't have to write Java void, JavaScript void over here. You have to navigate to a detail page.
Router link.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you can try this out. You can create a detail page like this, and in this you have to pass a parameter.
ID.
Yeah. /ID. You have to write /:ID.
Okay.
You have to create a detail page component also.
Yeah, I have created. Okay. New detail page component.
Yeah, so navigate to the detail page, and on that you have to implement that.
What will be the code for that?
So go to the recording of the routing and see what is the code for that.
Actually, on that, you have not tell about the detail page. You have tell about the listing page.
It's the same thing. So if you
Actually,
have,
yeah, this is your code. You have tell
Mhm.
you have describe about the listing page. You're not
Okay,
showing the
go
detail
to the
page.
routing file. So see, there is a news detail page also.
Yeah, but there is not any detail.
Okay, click on the TS file for that. Okay, that's fine. So go to the routing file. Routing module.ts.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you open these brackets? Okay. So go to news category component, news listing. Wait one second. Is this the right code?
हाँ हाँ हाँ
News listing.
Yeah, 1 second. So news listing, news category. So if you go to the news listing page component, I'm reading the property over there. I'm reading the parameters in it. See, I'm reading the route parameters over here. So you can use this code.
Okay. In my detailed TS file or a product list TS file.
The product detail file.
Product detail TS file. No?
So you have
Okay.
to read the parameters only from
Okay.
the URL. So in my code, if I'm writing that in the listing or any other file, it's the same logic. This
So
is the code for reading the parameters from the URL.
okay. 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 So I have to write this code in my product listing page to read the URL of particular that
You have
page.
to write
Okay.
this code in the product detail component
Okay.
to read the parameters from the URL. And based on the parameters, you have to make an API call to the server to load the details of that particular news article or product article or whatever you have.
I will try this out. Okay.
Okay,
Or if any query, I will let you know tomorrow.
sure, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from anyone?
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, I think no questions. So we can wrap up the session for today. In the tomorrow session, we are going to create a small project based on the requirements which we have. So please join in the tomorrow session. We're going to do a hands-on on how to set up a whole project end to end and implement different features in it. Okay, so I think we can
Kavin,
wrap. Yeah,
yeah, the deployment part is remaining or it is completed?
that's the only one. So we have, I've already showed you that how to set up Docker and uh, how to deploy using Nginx. In the assignment, so in the assignment, there can be a problem that you don't have Docker desktop on your system. So in that case, if you even if you provide the Docker file in the assignment, that will be also good.
Uh, actually, you have to, actually, we don't know about the Docker. You have to tell in a detail.
So I covered that in the session today. So what was the question? Nobody asked me any question. So what's the question on Docker?
Okay. Let me check with the class recordings. Okay. If I will any query, I will let you know tomorrow. Okay.
So the point is, if you like have attended the session, so I've just created this Docker file and created a build through it, a Docker image, and ran through the Docker daemon and created a container with it. So what I'm saying is, on your systems, you may not be able to run the Docker setup, and you may not be able to do the proper demo because you may be using the office laptops. Not this is not for you only; it's for everyone. So maybe you're using the office laptop, or maybe your laptop doesn't have support for it. So in that case, just create this kind of a Docker file into your project and submit that project into the LMS. It's a known thing that everybody may not have a system which can run Docker on it.
Okay. What
So
is
at least,
the criteria about the Docker for the system?
so you
Is
should
there
have a
any
system. So you should have a system which like a Windows 10 or Windows 11.
Yes.
Mac machine or a Linux machine. So on a Windows system, you have to set up WSL, you have to set up a virtualization support on it. So there are a few things specifically on a Windows machine. So every Windows system does not support it properly.
Okay.
So that's
Is
why
there any website? Is there any website to step by step to
you have to
install the
Docker
Docker?
setup on the Docker side. You can find the steps for setting up Docker on Windows.
Okay. Can you please share it in the chat?
Yep, I can send it to you. It's not something which is generally covered in this session because this is just an intro to Docker, not a complete Docker tutorial. So that's why you have to set it up on your system. And Windows is not great with Docker support. So it has been introduced only like 2 or 3 years back only in the system. So not all the laptops do support it. And it has like a huge requirement of memory and all those things. So I've sent you the link. Follow all those steps, and then only you can set up Docker in system.
Okay.
On a Mac system or a Linux system, it's very easy because they are all Unix systems, Unix-based operating systems. So you can handle Docker, but Windows is not. So you have to follow all these steps to set up Docker on your system. So that's why I'm telling you, if your system doesn't support it, don't worry. You can just submit the assignment with the Docker file, which I am going to send you now. Okay, so that's for the assignment number 2 for the today's session. There is a requirement that okay, you have to create a Docker file and create a Docker image and all those things. So deployment on Docker Hub is also optional. You don't have to say that okay, I have to deploy to Docker Hub and provide the link for it. It's also fine. Okay, so if you are interested into installing Docker on your system for Windows users, I've sent you a link. For Mac users, just you have to install Docker Desktop, and on your office laptops, please check the terms and licenses with your company. Otherwise, it will be a violation of the license, and that can be penalized to your company. Okay, so that's it. Thank you, everyone.